All right, man, peace. So when we left off, they were in the midst of an interplay in regards to whether or not they believed that it was relevant that the NFL owners actually cared about the cause of the NFL players and their alleged protest. Let's let them continue on.
Antonietta, thank you. So you just heard Seton Hall Sports Poll says 71% of those surveyed feel Trump should avoid commenting on the NFL player protest. Bomani, Will Kane are still with us. Before I get to that, though, Max, I know you wanted to respond to our earlier conversation on Malcolm Jenkins no longer protesting.
Well, quickly, the protest was never against the NFL. And this is why it ultimately, inevitably boils down to participation in the ceremony. Because it started with, I don't feel good about this. We're not living up to our ideals as a country. I'm not going to stand. Really, if you want to speak in general terms, what is the essence of it? And so if you accept money to your favorite cause, even if that favorite cause is the very cause of the thing you're protesting, to help that, okay, fine, but there will inevitably also be the sense that you're being bought off for PR purposes, Bomani, because the protest wasn't about the league in the first place. So it's
nonsense. The protest was always about the NFL. It was always about the league. Because if the protest was sincerely about what Colin Kaepernick claimed it was about, he would have directed his ire towards the police departments. He would have started in San Francisco with the SFPD, and he would have protested them. He would have been outside of their police precincts. He would have demanded to speak with the police chief of San Francisco. And then he would have proceeded from there. He decided that he was going to protest during the NFL game because he wanted to bring discord into the NFL. And he succeeded. Now, Malcolm Jenkins, seemingly being one who wants to resolve the issue or to try to resolve the issue, has moved forward, understanding that as a man, you don't do the same thing when you want a result. You have to proceed. You have to grow. So this is where the fissure has occurred or the fracture has occurred.
So it's great if you get them to give money or even change their hearts. But what does that have to do with whether or not you stand for the anthem, which is the protest? Because if you're forced to stand, ultimately your speech is being co-opted.
The point of standing during the anthem is because that's part of the NFL ritual. You're an NFL player. If you don't want to stand during the anthem, or if you don't want to take part in the anthem, it's no problem. But you also have to be prepared to deal with the ramifications and the repercussions. Now, when the repercussions of the NFL protests affect the bottom line, then you have to be prepared to have a serious reduction in your overall salary. Because if the owners lose money, you lose money because you're partners. That's how it works. You're not helping anybody by continuing to engage in an endeavor that's going to hurt your money. It makes no sense for anyone involved in the situation. So, this contention by many of the Caucasian liberals and many of the internet revolutionaries and the pro-blacks that the protest was never against the flag or against the anthem is falsehood. How could you say that it's not against the anthem when it's when the anthem starts that you decide to get down on one knee or raise a fist? So clearly, the protest is using the anthem as some form of a linchpin.
And what you are saying as the player is, I don't feel good about this. It's great that you feel better about the NFL, but it wasn't about the NFL to begin with.
Because presumably protesting the national anthem was a means to an end. It was an action that leads to a solution. But Monty, I asked you before the break, would you rather have their minds or their hearts? And I think you very correctly said their hearts. And of course, on an individual calculation, it's always their hearts.
Well, I believe that what you actually said was, would you rather have their money or their hearts? I don't believe that you said minds or their hearts. I believe that you said, would you rather have their money or their hearts? That's if I remember correctly. And he went on to say their hearts. Why is that? Because he wants a hug.
But as we've all agreed, what the players are now engaged in is politics. And institutionally, you're looking for change, and you're asking for the NFL to contribute to institutional changes, and you're getting $89 million. You're getting money, and I would say asking for their hearts might be asking for the perfect to be the enemy of the good. This is...
I agree with that. But when you have people who are addicted to arguing and addicted to dysfunctionality, that is often what you'll get. Perfect is the enemy of good. Once again, oftentimes you'll see somebody who's in a good situation and they'll fuck it up because they claim that they want something perfect, which is to imply that they're perfect. Sometimes people don't understand that the perfect scenario that you have in your mind is not perfect for you because you're not good enough for that perfection. Sometimes you have to work through things incrementally, until you can get to where you want to be because you deserve to be there, not because that's just the image that you have in your mind for yourself. So everything is a process.
Moving towards a solution, and I think Malcolm Jenkins is a central and proud figure in moving towards a solution.
Yeah, but the problem, as I said before, about why does it matter, Stephen A. say, why does it matter how Malcolm Jenkins looks at this? Because Malcolm Jenkins now looks like he works for the NFL, given some of the things that people are saying, and he needs to clear that up.
Well, I think that he needs to clear it up, but he needs to clear it up in juxtaposition to those players making those allegations clearing it up. Are they saying that because they have some type of proof, or are they saying that just to keep something going? Once again, many of the people today, particularly the internet revolutionaries and the pro-blacks, they're addicted to conflict. This is why I call them Discordianists. They're into Discordianism, pushing chaos and all type of havoc. They don't really have a plan, because a plan would mean that, wow, I actually have to look at myself. I have to examine myself. Most people don't want to do that. That can be very traumatic for a lot of people to have to look at themselves and say, here's the change that I need to make. I've said that a lot. I've said that many times, particularly in regards to the so-called pro-black woman. You'll see many of them on the internet ranting and raving about black this and black that. But if you were to tell them, black woman, if you want to help the so-called black race, dress modestly, dress properly, talk a lot less, be supportive of your man, I guarantee you most of them will respond back with, what does that have to do with black people? What does that have to do? Why do I have to do that? You understand what I'm saying? It's easy to go on rants and raves about what needs to be done until the spotlight shines on you and what you can do and what you should do. At the end of the day, brothers, the solution is only going to come within us. That's why Christ said what? He said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. You can't look to anybody else for any type of salvation. You have to look within yourself, and you have to turn back to the Most High. That's it, and get that order back. See, once the so-called black woman sees that the black man is not going to play her game anymore, that he's not going to go back and forth with her in her folly, then she's going to be forced to make certain choices. And then that's when people get revealed. People get revealed when they're put in a position where they have to make choices that are going to display who they really are. A lot of brothers like to come on the internet and talk about the black woman this, the black woman that. Well, the reason why the black woman is able to hide what her true motivations are is because most black men have not made the decisions that they need to make the black woman expose what she's really about.
If what you're working toward here is these issues of police brutality for people of color, it absolutely matters how Malcolm Jenkins looks, because his intentions absolutely matter. And when Will is saying how stately and how noble he appears to be in this situation, and the people who supposedly he represents are saying he's looking funny in the light, it's more important that he look right to the people that he supposedly stands with, as opposed to the skeptics. Yeah.
Well, who says that he's standing with them? I mean, I said this before. When they had those meetings about a month or so ago around Halloween, and they showed the people who walked into the NFL offices to quote unquote negotiate with the owners, it was only about 5 or 6 dudes. It wasn't 40 dudes. I don't know who these other 40 guys are. And if they're so sure about Malcolm Jenkins' intentions, then let them come on television and talk about it. You know why they won't do it? Because most of them probably are not really on the level to articulate themselves properly. They most likely don't have any true information or data. It's just hearsay and just their feelings being hurt. Because, wow, now we're put in a position where this guy took this money, and now we're going to look foolish if we continue to protest, if we continue to kneel.
Yeah, he brought in my support.
Listen, you can argue that, Bomani. I can respectfully disagree in this regard. If Bomani Jones was Malcolm Jenkins, and he took this position, and he publicly declared and stated why he took that position, and he can stand on that principle, who gives a damn what anybody else thinks?
You have to have that mentality if you're going to try to be any form of a leader. You can't worry about who's going to come against you, particularly most people who don't have the mental acuity to lead. It's easy to throw rocks at the throne. Remember, the throne is always up above. Most people who can't rule, they want to throw rocks. That's just how it goes. And by no means am I calling Malcolm Jenkins a ruler. From the perspective of the movement that they claim to represent, he was able to accrue a certain position as a leader or as a ruler. So I'm just going from that perspective. somehow he got in the position where he was the lead negotiator. Eric Reed is running his mouth. If Eric Reed was really about what he's trying to act like he's about, he should have been the lead guy. How come he was not the lead guy? Isn't he supposed to be Colin Kaepernick's left-hand man? Or maybe, who knows, maybe Eric Reed is not as plugged in as I'm trying to allege he is, or as he's trying to project that he is. And he's just somebody who's trying to feed off of Kaepernick's energy by association. Who figures, look, I was the guy who was kneeling right next to Kaepernick. I should be the guy in charge. Or people should take me seriously. Who the hell knows? Most of these guys are bugged out of their fucking mind anyway.
Because he has the facts to back him up. That's the point that I'm trying to make. You're going to have people that have problems all the time, Bomani. You and I both know there was no plan as it pertained to this initially. We both understand that initially when Colin Kaepernick took the knee, he didn't appear to have a plan. Ultimately, the players in unison were not kneeling the way that they did in abundance until the president called them SOBs. And so when you take it from that perspective.
Yes, the players were not kneeling in abundance like they were until the president called them SOBs. And please notice that ever since Donald Trump activated them, that put the owners in the position where they were forced to resolve the situation. They had to expedite solving and resolving this situation. If it was not for Donald Trump saying what he said, you would still have about 15 or 20 guys around the league kneeling, and it would still be a major black eye on the NFL. Donald Trump is the one who has precipitated this entire resolution or near resolution or attempt at a resolution, because he put the owners in a situation where they had to deal with a multitude of players kneeling and finally bring this thing to a head. And this is why I stated when Trump first made his statements that he was trying to smoke out all of the little scattered participants or believers or adherents to this protest, so that he could smoke them out and resolve the issue.
The understanding is, excuse me, what are we trying to accomplish here? When Martha Ford asked the players in Detroit, what exactly is your motivation, your goal, your agenda? Amir Abdullah, Theo Riddick, and others were able to answer that question. Other owners may ask the same question. Clearly, those questions were asked to Malcolm Jenkins. If he addressed it with an emphatic answer that he believes he can stand on principle for, he may have an obligation to articulate and elocute that to the masses. Fair enough. But once he does that, you're going to always have somebody that has a problem with it because they have their own individual agendas, and you can't let that influence you.
All right, I want to...
Absolutely. And before Bomani responds, let me also say, not only can Malcolm Jenkins not worry about how people are going to respond, once again, these naysayers that are members of that coalition, they must also have their own alternative to what he did. You can't run around talking about how Malcolm Jenkins sold out the coalition and he sold out the protest, he sold out the cause, and they have yet to present anything feasible in regards to how this situation is going to be resolved.
I want to transition to our president because you just brought that up.
Let him answer, Molly. Go ahead, Bomani.
Yeah,
please.
There's a difference between disagreeing with him and thinking that his intentions are problematic. Disagreeing with him is one thing, but people looking at him like he the feds right now. That's where the issue comes.
Oh, who gives a shit? So-called black people always think of somebody as the feds. And you know the people who are the feds, the people who you think are so glorious with their public displays of civil unrest. Those are the people who are working with the feds. All right. And look, I'm not saying that Malcolm Jenkins might not be a double agent. Who the hell knows with all this craziness? But I will say this. At least Malcolm Jenkins seems to have some type of strategic or logical format to what he's trying to get accomplished. I mean, black people with a lot of their hood reasoning. Look, things have to come to a head. Things have to be resolved. You know, you can't let all these things hang on and just dwell forever. How long are you going to protest for? You're going to protest until you have equality? Well, you're going to be protesting until America's destroyed. All right? Good luck with that. Because you're never going to get quote-unquote equality here.
Because he hasn't said anything. I'm saying once he says something, then you wash that aside. Now it's a difference of opinion. What he can't do is sit in the dark. What he can't do is sit in the dark and say nothing while...
Yeah, like Kaepernick been doing. Like Kaepernick, their hero's been doing. And Bomani Jones seems like somebody who has had a battery put in his back by some fake ass whistleblower from the from the Players Coalition who has an axe to grind with Malcolm Jenkins because maybe he wanted a little shine, or who knows, maybe Bomani was speaking with Eric Reed. Who knows?
While these people are throwing those shrapnels at him, that's what he can't do. But once he speaks his mind, Bomani, it's all butter.
Max, let's have you start on our president here. We saw the poll, 71% say they don't want him commenting on the NFL and these anthem protests. What's your reaction to that?
It's interesting to me because, as everyone knows by now, Donald Trump's approval ratings are the lowest in the history of polling for this point in anyone's presidency in history. And his disapproval ratings are very high, and yet they're not 71%. And what that tells me is even his base is like, come on, you gotta be kidding. Even his base is seeing through this. And maybe also that even his base is part of the kind of broader feeling that they want their football left alone. That cuts both ways, not just against players who are, hey, leave our football alone, leave politics out of it, but also, importantly, I think in greater numbers, against Trump.
Well, look, first off, I don't take most of these polls seriously. I never have for any president. Of course, the mass media is going to say that Donald Trump has the highest disapproval rating of all time. They have an axe to grind. Do I believe that most of his constituency do not like that he's speaking up about the NFL? No, I don't believe that. I believe that there may be a partial remnant of his constituency that doesn't like that he's always talking about the NFL. Number one, because they believe that he has his priorities in disarray, that they may believe that there are other things that he should be talking about, and also there may be a notion that, look, this is a record that you've been playing over and over and over again. We get it. We're already done with the NFL until they stop the protests anyway. There's no need to keep talking about it.
Go ahead, Will.
I guess 71% is starting to agree with where I've been from the beginning. The president's position on the anthem protest, to me, for me, are like a scene in The Big Lebowski when Walter and the dude are hanging out in their car, and Walter's saying, am I wrong? Am I wrong? And the dude's saying, you're not wrong, Walter. You're just and he says jerk, but he doesn't say jerk. He calls him something else. I've agreed with some of the president's substance. I've agreed that it's absurd for Marshawn Lynch to sit during the American national anthem and stand during the Mexican. I've agreed that it is disrespectful. I've agreed that there's been a lack of leadership coming from the NFL. But I have said from the beginning, the president of the United States, neither his priorities, nor his tone, nor his word choice, none of it is appropriate.
Look, let me say this about Marshawn Lynch. I'm on record as stating that I don't I don't view him the same as Kaepernick because he's been doing the same thing for a long time now. He's got no attention put on him. Why? Because he was not set up to be an agent of chaos like Kaepernick was. Okay? To me, I look at Marshawn Lynch as like the Dennis Rodman of the NFL. He's a guy who is just, he marches to the beat of his own drum. I don't really pay him much attention. Do I believe that it was ludicrous that he sat for the American national anthem and stood for the Mexican one? I can't even call it that. I would just say that that's just Marshawn being Marshawn. I mean, it is what it is.
So the president of the United States, we know, I think it's clear to everybody why he's doing it. It's a cynical play, either for himself because he wanted to be an NFL owner, or because it's good politics for him, because it continues to rile up people that already agree with him. It's cynical, and people can see through it.
Go ahead, Bomani.
All right, I feel like the issue that is people like watching football. What all of this has done, though, is thrown in people's faces. A lot of them, the reality that as much as they like football, they actually dislike the players they watch a whole lot more.
I would agree with that. That's the first thing that this brother said that I agree with. I think that there is a great deal of resentment at the fact of in regards to most of the viewership of the NFL and the NBA, that they have to watch niggers. They have to watch the people in the sport that they love the most be niggers. That the people who are the most proficient in those sports happen to be niggers. I think that bothers people, but I think that they're able to sweep it under the rug as long as they're not reminded that they're watching niggers. I believe that the protest reminds them that they're watching niggers. And that's really what the overall offense is. It's like, in their mindset, it's like, look, nigga, we let you into this league. You're making millions of dollars. You could easily be back in the projects with Pookie and them. All right, so don't come here and complain. I believe that that is the sentiment, and that is why, once again, it is so ridiculous, it's so ludicrous, it is so absurd that the so-called black man continues to seek validation from the Caucasian. You continue to seek their love. It's pathetic. You need to move past that.
Or the problem is that they have let their distaste for the players cloud their minds. Now they've lost their football. And I do think a lot of those people who have a hard time separating these things would like to be in a place where they don't have to think about these things. And they normally blame those sorts of things on the players when they have something to say, but they just say stick to sports. I just want to watch my football. I think with these protests, a lot of it, they probably stopped thinking about it if Trump would stop bringing it up, and then they wake up in the morning and they look up and Trump wants to talk about it, and they would probably prefer not to do it. I imagine for people even on his side, there's a measure of fatigue because he's saying the same things over and over again. He's not bringing anything new to the table. So I do think a lot of the people, even within his base, would probably just like to watch the football.
Or maybe Trump just feels like he has more of a command over what's going on in the NFL than he does in regards to what's going on in international affairs. Maybe he continues to go on and on and on about the NFL because deep down he wishes that he was still in the capacity where he could just be a fan and not have to worry about America and what he's being told to do by certain sponsors and certain powers, and he doesn't have to be pulled this way and that way in regards to things that he does not particularly care about. I believe that Trump thought that being president would be much simpler than it has been. A lot of these guys get into the office and they realize, wow, this is really what it's about. I didn't quite know this. They didn't tell me that I was going to be like a hamster on a wheel. So who knows? Donald Trump constantly going on and on about the NFL could be some form of therapy for him.
Bomani, I completely agree with you. I think people want their football, but more importantly, they don't want the president any longer to get away with distracting them from the real issues that he needs to be involved with. Their attitude is, look, we want our football. Damn it, you the one that decided to run for the presidency of the United States. You're the president. Handle real business that really, really matters and leave us alone to watch our football. I think ultimately that's the message that's being sent here, because I think also people are awakening to the reality that a lot of this is petty. You're the president of the United States. Why are you even interested in this issue? Why are you involving yourself in this issue? Even to those who may agree with him, where he stole the narrative and changed it from protest about oppression, inequality, and police brutality, he changed it to an issue about the flag.
Look, once again, black people have to stop complaining about why white people believe that this protest is about the flag. If you're protesting during the national anthem and you're protesting during the flag, and most of the main protagonists for this protest are stating that the national anthem is racist and that the flag does not represent what it claims to represent, then they're protesting the flag. Just claim that. Claim it and stop trying to act like that's not what it's about. You know, I mean, it looks ridiculous when people keep trying to act as if they're incredulous as to why many Caucasians are accusing the protesters of protesting the flag and the national anthem. It just looks ridiculous. When you don't own that, then nobody else can take you seriously.
Even for those who may believe in him, they're saying, excuse me, we got bigger issues for you to be concerned with, as opposed to you engaging in petty behavior, getting back at a bunch of owners that didn't let you in their good old boys club.
Well, there you go, Steve. There you go. Trump clearly is attempting to strong arm the NFL. Maybe it's because he's upset that they would not allow him to be an owner, but also just from a financial perspective, the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar organization. I'm pretty sure that Trump has communicated to them and let them know that if you don't resolve this issue, we're gonna levy you. No, we're gonna hit you with a lot of tax levies. You know, simple as that. And you know, you're not gonna like it. And I believe that that's why the NFL owners have really pressed the gas on trying to resolve this issue, as well as the commissioner. Even though I do believe that the commissioner has dual allegiances. You know, people keep talking about Malcolm Jenkins. Look at that damn commissioner. The commissioner has dual allegiances.
Back in 2014, when you wanted to purchase the Buffalo Bills, I think people are getting wise to that act. They're getting wise to his evasive tactics. And even though his base is still going to support him, they are saying, excuse me, let's not forget, what our priorities are. Focus on what you need to focus on. Leave the football to us, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean a damn thing in the grand scheme of things when it comes to just about football. We need you to focus on different issues.
Particularly when the administration gets bad news, if someone is indicted or if there's some kind of
and then here he
deal
comes
cut, or if
talking
there's
about
a big
football.
vote, or there's a big vote coming up that may be unpopular politically, etc., he will bring this up. And just
Or maybe that's his way of saying that that shit really doesn't matter. Maybe that's his way of saying that he believes that it's fake news. Maybe that's his way of saying that he believes that most of this is a witch hunt that's been initiated by many of his enemies. Not even talking about from a political perspective in regards to the fake Democrat versus Republican shit show. Maybe that's just his way of saying that the people who sponsored Hillary are trying to address me or attack me, and my sponsors are allowing me to be put through this ritual. Who knows? I'm sure that they already have traced whatever monies they claim or whatever benefit that they got from the Russian government, or whatever influence Russia may have had on the outcome of the general election. They pretty much already know what type of power Russia has or does not have. It's the same power they had during the Obama administration and before that. The issue with Trump is that he seems to be someone who is not particularly in line with the international bankers. I stated this a very, very long time ago. He is a Zionist, as all presidents are, but he does seem to be combative towards the international bankers, and he does seem to be not really playing. He does not seem to be playing along in regards to many of the financial reforms that they want to implement on the American people, particularly in regards to the Federal Reserve. And I made a video about that when that issue came about with him comparing himself to Andrew Jackson, and everybody thought that he was trying to glorify a slave owner. Andrew Jackson was against the implementation of a national bank in America. And this is why Trump said what he said about Andrew Jackson if he was president, that the Civil War would not have happened. That is what I believe was behind Donald Trump making those statements. But I mean, we'll see.
And just because he thinks maybe that it's good politics, and maybe it played well, because early on it did look like good politics. It was racially divisive, and it played to his base and all those things. The point...
It was not racially divisive. The only way that you could say things that are racially divisive is if the races are unified. You can only divide something that is unified. You cannot divide something that's already divided. All you can do is point out the division.
The point about the number 71% want him to stop is that it appears to no longer be good politics when even members of his hardcore constituency are saying, come on, enough.
Look at that. I think we all agree.
Yeah, barely. Malcolm.
No, I don't think that you guys all agree. I just think that you guys have come to an impasse. I believe that you guys are pretty worn out by this issue. I believe that Bomani Jones is frustrated about what has occurred in regards to the NFL protests, because this storyline seems to be nearing its conclusion. But we'll see.
Malcolm Jenkins tweeting this. This initiative between the NFL Owners and Players Coalition does not mandate an end to any player demonstrations. It's always been about the issue, strengthening criminal justice system and fight for racial and social equality. It's always the right time for Bomani Jones. What, Stephen A., do you want to mention something?
I said people are still not watching. Ratings are still being lost. Revenue is still being compromised. And if that ultimately ends up affecting the owners in a negative way, they're going to make sure it affects the players in a negative way. That stuff can't be ignored either, though. Yep,
we know what it always comes down to. Bomani, we appreciate you. We'll be listening to the podcast and looking forward to your new show.
I'm not listening to your lame ass. Nothing against you, brother. But you're a so-called liberal black, which means that behind all that rhetoric, you worship women and you want equal rights for homosexuals and all that other shit. You're not fooling me. I have love for every so-called black man, but a lot of these niggas are bugged out of their fucking mind. But anyway. All right, now I just wanted to include this portion. I've touched on this before in regards to people who have intimate relations with so-called black people who happen to be of another race. They start to delude themselves into thinking that they can speak with authority on so-called black issues, particularly towards so-called black men. And you're going to see Molly Karam once again do this. Let's watch and see what she has to say.
First, a hat tip to the GQ Man of the Year and the SI Muhammad Ali Sports Legacy Award winner, Colin Kaepernick, for starting a $100 million conversation. Because if he didn't take a knee and risk it all, we'd never be seeing this money. So,
no, actually, you're not seeing any money. So you're talking about you're not seeing shit. But in reality, if it wasn't for Malcolm Jenkins actually pursuing some form of resolution, there would be no money there. Now, people could say that Colin Kaepernick is the one who started the discord, but if it was up to him, the discord would still continue. Okay? You'd have a point if Colin Kaepernick had a goal to work with the NFL owners. He never showed at any point that he was willing to work with them. It was only people like Shannon Sharp and later on Malcolm Jenkins who decided that they want to try to use the owners and parlay that into some form of association or assistance with using their resources to help so-called black people. I never once heard Colin Kaepernick ever say anything to even imply that.
So that I applaud. But what I really find unfortunate is how this has all ended. We kept asking, what's the end game for these protests? I'll tell you what it is. The protests were potentially sold for $89 million. So let me get this straight. Kaepernick sacrificed his career, dreams, and reputation fighting for social justice because he was showed he couldn't do both, be an activist and be in the league. But in the end, the Players Coalition allegedly agrees to a deal with the price tag, and Colin's left out of it. Tell me that doesn't feel a little dirty.
No, it doesn't feel dirty at all. Why are you worried about him being left out of something for? Is the goal to assist so-called black people, or is the goal to make sure that he gets credit? You can't call the money basically sellout money when you just said that you thanked him for seeing the quote-unquote $100 million. Which one is it, bitch? Like, come on, man.
Everything in life cannot be bought. And instead, Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Boldin did just that, making a deal in, quote, good faith with the NFL. And in return, Jenkins will no longer protest. First of all, who makes deals in good faith? This is 2017. Get those specifics in writing that the NFL will commit to campaigns and PSCs, just like the Salute to Service, breast cancer awareness, and NFL Green. This is about way more than money, folks. And on top of that, how does the Players Coalition have the audacity to accept the offer without the consent of close to 40 players who vehemently want to reject it and take Kaepernick out of the equation? I call that being a double agent. So yes, I get the optics look bad that the players are now divided. But what is Eric Reed, who was the first player to join Colin, supposed to do? Compromise and lose the dignity of this protest? This protest never had any dignity. So that's nonsense. The protest was never dignified in the first place. Beyond that, you're assuming that the so-called quote-unquote 40 members of the NFL Players Coalition were in direct contact with Malcolm Jenkins in the first place, which I doubt that they were. Most of those guys don't seem like they were all there upstairs. Most of them seem like they were just clamoring for some form of attention. So I seriously doubt that they were ever in communication with Malcolm Jenkins in the first place. It seems to me to have been more of a setup of Malcolm, you go talk to those guys because we don't feel like talking to them. And then when he made the deal that he made, now all of a sudden he's supposedly a bad guy. No, it's just very, very interesting. Beyond that, this woman has, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, the audacity and the unmitigated gall to come on national television and call Malcolm Jenkins a double agent. Those are very, very extreme terms. I understand that you venerate Colin Kaepernick with him being an agent of chaos and all, and you being a woman. I get it. You see a kinship, you feel a kinship with him because you guys both like to perpetuate confusion in your everyday life and just in society in general. I get it. But I think that you should spend a little bit more time maybe getting into the particulars of what exactly the extent of the agreement is between Malcolm Jenkins and the NFL owners before you say anything. Because here's what we do know. As you already admitted at the start of your soliloquy, Colin Kaepernick had no plan at all. So you either got $89 million or you got nothing, because he had no plans on getting anything. He showed no inclination to speak to the NFL owners at all. And I'm sorry, I take Malcolm Jenkins at his word that Colin Kaepernick was reached out to and he decided to not attend the meeting. Just looking at Colin Kaepernick's, when you look at his track record of conduct in the last year or so, he has shown no inclination to put his best foot forward or to speak for himself. Just to look like a unified front? Absolutely not. They've come too far to settle.
Too far where? You started your statement by saying that they never had an end game. So how could you state that they have gone anywhere, that they've much less gone far, when you cannot even track or verify that they've made any distance whatsoever until Jenkins decided to make the deal that he made. Once again, brothers, I can't say this enough. I have no horse in this race. All right, I really could care less because I already know that none of these plans are going to work in the least. But I will say this. At least Malcolm Jenkins seems to be legitimate in his intentions. He has come out and made an attempt to associate himself with various parties that actually seem like they want to accomplish something in regards to the agenda that they claim to have. I have not seen anything like that from Kaepernick at all. But just the fact that this female will get on TV and speak with such, speak so ardently in regards to an issue that really does not affect her. This is in regards to so-called black men. But, because she's getting digged down by Jalen Rose, she feels like she can speak in such a manner. It's very unfortunate for her to speak that way about Malcolm Jenkins. I think that she should at least, if she had any decency, wait until Malcolm Jenkins was to communicate with their show. Maybe they could reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to come on their show personally, or, do telecommunications that they could speak with him over the phone on the show. And maybe try to get to the bottom of things, as opposed to trying to cast all these aspersions as if he threw a monkey wrench in a revolution that was in its latter stages, like in the scene in Braveheart where William Wallace is chasing down the King of England and he gets intercepted by another knight, and he pulls the knight's helmet off and he sees that it's his homeboy. Like you're not even close. There was no movement at all.
So good for you for breaking away. Stand for nothing, fall for anything, just like the NFL protests were bought.
Yeah, well, Malcolm Jenkins, Molly Karam said that you got bought off, man. Very, very serious allegations. So only thing I can tell you is don't be like Kaepernick. You better speak for yourself. You better speak up for yourself, because the liberals are very, very upset with you right now. You seem to have decided to veer off into your own path and actually try to resolve the issue. So we'll see. Anyway, peace.